It is my extreme pleasure today to share with you my interview with Lars Emmerich. I've mentioned him several times over the past couple of months. He is the founder of Ammo Foundations, Ammo Acceleration. I think that there are other parts of the Ammo program, but it actually stands for Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization. See, I had to pull it out of my head. Acronyms are always difficult, but many of you know that I have tried numerous different marketing avenues, and I'm not going to repeat any information that's in this interview. So go ahead and listen in, and you'll hear all about my journey for paid marketing coaching and everything that I've experienced, because honestly, this whole episode should act as a sales pitch for you to join Ammo if you're at a point in your career where you feel like you'd like to be a full-time author. This is the way. It is the way. I've heard from many of you in private conversations that there's no one-size-fits-all kind of marketing thing to get your books out in the hands of readers. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. This will work for any author. We have people in the program. And listen, first and foremost, let me just tell you, I do not get any kind of compensation or kickback if you join the program. I'm just an avid fan who happens to have found something that works. I always think that in the back of people's minds, they're like, oh, Jody will stand to benefit if I join Ammo. So listen, don't even tell Lars that you came because you heard this podcast episode. Just keep it a complete secret. Don't let him know anything about it if you choose to join, because I don't want you to feel like this is a sales pitch because I get something. This is a sales pitch because as authors, it's really, really difficult to make a living doing what we're doing, and this is the way. Now, I do want to put a big asterisk in there. You have to lay out a good amount of money to take this program. For me, it's a reasonable amount of money. It's not going to break the bank or take food out of my family's mouth. For you, it may be something where you have to be creative with finances to figure out a way. And I'm not going to give any financial advice to anybody, but I can say, based on my experience, if you have more than 3 novels, especially if they're in a series, and you have more books coming out, it is my strong belief that anybody in that situation who can write a complete sentence and a decent story and feel strongly that their work will be loved, you can make a living doing this program within a year's time. And so the reason I say it that way is I've advocated in the past for putting stuff on a credit card and kicking that can down the road until your profits catch up with you, and that this would be a situation where I would do that. I haven't actually done it yet, but I did just order a credit card that has 0% interest for 12 months. So we know how I'm going to be spending my money. I really believe in this process. Okay, there you go. That is the really upfront sales pitch for Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization and Lars Emmerich. And last but not least, let me go ahead and give you my numbers so far, because what would a podcast episode about this be any good if you didn't get raw data? Here it is. Okay, so far, I've been in the program for just about a month, actually in running my sales funnel. I'm not going to talk about the costs of the different programs that I use to get the data I need to become more appealing to my ideal customer. I'm only going to talk about ad spend. So far in ad spend, I've spent $478. That may sound like a lot to you, but I have sold 90 books and I have netted $284.70. So I am reaching 90 readers in a month, and I earned $284 doing that. There's more to this system than I can say, but what I will tell you is that I am nowhere near getting the kind of conversion rates that other people in this program do. I'm still so early in the process that it's frankly amazing that I've sold as many books as I have. And also, let me tell you that I am doing this with pre-order books. So there's a huge strike against me is that I'm only actually delivering one book to anybody who buys right now. The other 2 books will be delivered upon publication later. And so when people look at my site, they always will see that, and that probably has some effect on how well I'm able to sell. So if you have 3 books out right now, imagine how much better you could be doing than I am doing. And yet I'm really happy with the fact that I've only paid out about $200 at this point to the ad spend itself, and seeing where this can go. I'm really excited. We're only talking ebooks right now. That's something that's important. And again, I don't want to reiterate too much of what's in the episode, but this is for ebooks only. You can run a similar system with paperbacks, with audiobooks. I have an audiobook being made right now. I'm really excited to announce who the reader is going to be, because a lot of you, if you listen to audiobooks, will know this lady. She's an amazing performer, but I don't have a contract signed yet. I have a verbal agreement. And so I, just in case anything backs out, I don't want to have announced something and be like, well, it fell through. But audiobooks, print books, ebooks. I haven't started to even market 2 avenues of this journey, and I'm doing pretty well. So I really see in the very near future being a profitable author, a full-time author, somebody making good money. And yeah, that's where I want to leave this right now. Lars is a great guy. The first time that I met him, I sent him a long email and I said, listen, buddy, I have tried everything out there to sell books and nothing has really worked. So here's my situation. Should I even waste my time joining a program? And I laid my guts out on a wax paper platter and just tell me, that you heard me. And literally his whole response was, I don't see any red flags here. I was enraged. I was like, that's all? You're asking me to join this program on faith and put all the money into the program, and you don't see any red flags? It was a moment. It was a moment. He is a really direct, really frank kind of character. And I've come to appreciate that on the calls that I've been on in the program, because it takes away the emotional edge. I don't know about you as an author, but I'm really emotional about my product. If people don't like it, it hurts. If people have a copy of the book and they don't read it, I'm bummed. Especially, if I know them, I'm bummed. Otherwise, it's kind of like dollars and cents. But I am very emotional about it, and this program helps to take out the emotion. It gives you really specific benchmarks and ways to reach and curate your audience so that everything is profitable and you can scale up. Please enjoy my interview with Lars Emmerich. Oh, and also, I will have all of the information for how you can connect with Ammo, how you can buy Lars's books if his genre sounds interesting to you. Everything Lars will be in the show notes, so do make sure to drop into the show notes. If you're not on my Substack mailing list already, why not? Because you get an actual email twice a week when I drop episodes that has the nitty-gritty, all of the great stuff in there, the stuff that if you're missing out on it, you're really not getting the full TRBM experience. So again, please enjoy my interview with Lars Emmerich. If you've ever watched an author read in public and felt bored, TRBM is the antidote. TRBM is for writers what time-lapse was for painters, guitar solos and spotlights were for bands, what chainsaws and ice blocks were for sculptors. What does TRBM stand for? Tiny roses bloom mildly? Taboo rituals being mastered. Torture requires better methods? You decide. I started my process. I left my W-2 job and thought, come hell or high water, I'm going to be a full-time author. I can make this happen. I've got enough reserves of cash to do this because of some kind of good financial habits early in my life. And then I spent the first year being self-employed, building this marketing podcast. And it was right around January that I thought, I'm writing less than I ever have before. I'm reading less than I ever have before. And I see no viable option to be a full-time author. I do see a viable way to maybe make money as a marketing podcaster about books, except I haven't published a book. And so I don't have that authority to tell people how to do something I myself haven't done. So the question here is, how are you able to do Ammo and be a writer? Do you feel that there's a love conflict there at all?
Oh yeah, it's not just a love conflict. It's a different way of being when I'm working on a business project with 4,000 little details and the pressure of having money on the line every day in advertising. And it's not just in ammo, it's also the advertising process for my novels. The business aspect of it it employs a completely different aspect of my brain, inside of my brain, an aspect of my personality. And because it feels so immediate and so urgent, it always feels top of mind. And it's an effort, both in terms of building space in my schedule to do this, to write or to do creative things. And it's also an effort to give myself permission to do this less urgent, less immediate thing, working on a story. One of the ways that I have helped myself along that route, and I'm not by any stretch perfect at it. Look at my productivity compared to somebody like, look at Dawson, for example, Mark Dawson. He writes about twice as many books as I do, but he also has James Blatch to run his business, run the outreach side of his business. And I think also a big portion of the administrative, tasks for his business as well. Mm-hmm. But it helps me to recall that in the moment when I feel like these 17 advertising or marketing tasks are taking precedence, and it really feels like an indulgence and maybe even maybe even like a waste of my time, quote unquote, mm-hmm. in this particular moment to go sit down and spend 6 hours working on a novel. But that's what makes the whole thing go. It's what, at the end of the day, makes the business move forward. And the lead time to produce the new products is so great that you have to stay focused throughout the whole thing. But it feels like such a long distance goal when, to complete the novel, even if you're on a schedule where you're writing a novel every, 4, 8, 12 weeks or so, that still feels farther than looking after the ad money you have at risk today, right? Yeah. So I would never tell anybody I have this dialed in or I have I've perfected a process, because I just haven't, is the bottom line. The best I can do is schedule time on the calendar and then force myself to stick to it and sit down and get into the groove and enjoy the process.
Yeah. So so many things to unpack there. One, I really relate to what you were saying, and it's really personal for me at the moment. As of Thursday of this past week, I saw this really good forward progress with using the AMO program to sell my ebooks. And I was having enough success that I felt like, okay, I'm not profitable yet, but I see the trajectory. And then Thursday, inexplicably, something broke. I couldn't figure out what happened, but no purchases. And we go all the way up to Sunday. And I'm not telling you that to have you assess the problem. We'll talk about that later. But I am telling you that to say that immediately on Thursday, when I noticed the problem starting to occur, it became really difficult for me to write my novel. I stopped wanting to do the thing I loved, because I was like, the tagline for this podcast, in fact, is, what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening or nobody's reading? Right. So that's exactly what mode I go into, is crisis mode. And those ad dollars make it very real. There's money going out, and if nothing's coming back in, you feel it in a way that it's like playing poker with M&Ms. If there's no money on the line, you just don't vibrate the same way. Yeah,
that's a really big insight, and it never gets better. Whether you're risking $50 a day or $5,000 a day, it's still a risk. And I've got a friend named Rishi, and Rishi is he's a Silicon Valley veteran of a couple of decades, and marketing is his game, and he oversees $800 million a year in marketing spend. And he says it doesn't matter if you have $1,000 a day at risk or $1 million a day at risk, it feels the same. The emotional response is the same. So that's a fact of life, and that's a fact of doing business, not just in our business, but I think in any business. The second key, and so what's the takeaway? We have to become comfortable with having something at risk. And if there were a way to build a business without putting money at risk in marketing and advertising, I would be all over it. It just doesn't seem, the feedback loop is way too long to know if you're on the right track with the free methods, and they just don't work. You just can't, you can make a few bucks here and there, but you can't make a career income out of it. The second really interesting thing is just that phenomenon where it's gangbusters for a couple of days and then it's crickets. And you feel like, gosh, something must have broken. There must be something wrong in the universe, or, one of my web tools is not working. But it turns out that the nature of business is that it's not like the steady paycheck that your company used to issue you. And we, as much as we need to go do our own thing, we also really like that clockwork security of a paycheck showing up at the same. No matter if the day is good or bad, the weeks were good or bad, the paycheck is the same. There's something psychologically very comforting about that. But in a business where you're making your own way, doesn't matter what business that is. And ironically, even in those big businesses that employ people and give them regular biweekly paychecks, when you're making decisions in that business, it's the same.
It's the same, exactly.
Feast or famine. But worse, because now you're looking after these dozens or hundreds or thousands of people. And so the same thing happens where it feels nice and smooth down at the employee level when the paychecks come in, but it's just not smooth at all in the grand scheme. So those are important insights, and that points to the personal development, psychological awareness, the set of skills that let you do what you know you need to do despite the ups and downs, because the emotions are real.
Let's step one step back and take a moment to talk about some differences that I've experienced, because I have actually been part of and had conversations with the self-publishing formula. So never Mark Dawson, but I've talked to James Blatch a little bit, had some conversations with him. And I think it's a great program for a lot of people. I didn't see that there was the marriage of philosophy with technique in that program. So they can talk to you a little bit about building your Facebook ads, but there wasn't just this like concrete testing method that made the program really effective. And then I imagine you're also aware of Self-Publishing School with Chandler Bolt. I even ran some ad promo for them for a campaign they were doing this last summer. And I like that guy pretty well, but in the end, it's all based on Amazon and selling your first 10,000 copies. And there's just zero real concrete, this will work type of stuff. So, and then I also was part of Russell Brunson's ClickFunnels. And that's the first time I've ever asked for a refund. They said there was a refund. I wanted to join. I had a good idea that it could work. But when I got inside, they have these cool tools to build the website and to teach you, like, you need to drive traffic to this landing page. But there was no guidance on how to build that ad. And what I found is that I sank really fast, sunk a bunch of money into an ad that failed. I didn't know how to build it. And then I found you. And what was so really appealing about your program was that you married the philosophy. Hey, there's a real possibility that you can be a full-time author with, here is the way to sell ebooks. I haven't gotten to the paperbacks, but I think that's what is so great about Ammo, and the reason that I will be recommending it to every author I know who can possibly afford to start the program, because there's a financial outlay that goes into it. But man, kudos to you for seeing the need to build a program where you could actually coach people through the baby steps along the way. Have you noticed that before? I'm not asking you to talk about anybody else's program, but have you noticed that a lot of programs maybe have a bunch of philosophy, but not a lot of concrete steps?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that endorsement. I really appreciate it. Yes, what I have noticed about the other programs out there that I haven't taken all of them. I've taken a good number of them. What I found to be my impression is that there, as you say, there is a lot of technical discussion about which websites to go to, where to click, what to paste where, but there wasn't a whole lot on what I should actually be saying when I'm writing these ads, or what should I show people when I'm putting an image in the ad, or what should I say in the email, and how do I know if it's working, and how can I diagnose what's broken and where? Because the customer's journey includes a number of stops along the way, and there are all sorts of psychological milestones that we need to hit in order to demonstrate to somebody who might be an ideal customer for us that A, we're legitimate, B, they're not the first to try this, and other people have read these books and they have enjoyed them. And here are the testimonials, and here's the structure of the offer so that you can make an informed buying decision. There's a lot that goes into what to say and how to evaluate whether or not that's working. I didn't really find that in the more just sort of, I would say, procedural instruction for how to procedurally set things up, but didn't really discuss the marketing aspect of the content that needed to fit in these different spaces on the internet.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's with so many variables involved, even in a basic advertisement, there's a ton of variables at play. So you have to have a way to pull those variables apart and test each one methodically and in a systematic way, so that you can have confidence that what you're putting in front of people is likely to work. Now it seems utterly crazy to me to build a whole funnel and then start testing, right?
Yeah.
So you have soup to nuts all the way to check all the pages, all the emails, everything built, ready to go. And you flip the switch. And this is the classic situation. You flip the switch and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. And you don't know what's broken because everything's a little bit broken. So it really is important to take a methodical approach. It feels much slower in the beginning, but it winds up being much faster in the end because at each step you're building along on top of knowledge and results that you proved out by testing in the prior step. So we find a much higher success rate. Nothing works for everybody. Nothing works for anybody forever. People need to keep that in mind. But the fundamental is if you want to serve people, you have to understand where they are and how they're thinking about things so that you can meet them where they are and show them what you have. Yeah. So I think that was a need in the marketplace that fortunately we're able to fill.
Your program is so different than the other programs too, and that I made the exact mistake you're talking about even in your program. I looked at my wife and I said, well, I can't see any reason to build all these tools if I'm going to run an ad and nobody's going to even have an opportunity to buy. Even though I watched your videos, I had so much context in my mind. I was like, why would I waste ad dollars if I can't have even if it's a 0.1% chance that someone might click that ad and then go through and buy. So I did build my landing page. I did build my Shopify store. I did all of those things before I ran my color block testing. And then it dawned on me, there's a reason for the order here. And I felt stupid and I felt sheepish and a little bit embarrassed, but it did give me the good opportunity. There's another gentleman in the program right now who's newer and came to me asking a lot of questions. And I was like, trust me, you need to start running your color block right now. You need to get those taglines going because everything else you build predicates on knowing the right language to say to people. And as soon as I just went backwards and did what you told me to do, I could see the immediate progress. But the one thing I want to say too, and then I'm ready to kind of move on into a couple of other places, is because you create the baby steps where for people who are listening and don't know a lot about the program, the first really measurable step that you take in Ammo is to build an ad on Facebook where you're just going to run for click traffic to see what people are interested in. And you pick a tagline that you think people might be interested in. And you run 10 taglines simultaneously, and you see which one people respond to. And oddly enough, even though you're like, okay, I'm going to spend $30 for a day. I don't know if it has to be 30, but that's kind of what the video said. That's how I did it. I immediately start to see what ideas resonate. And that feels like a victory. So it feels like $30 well spent because now I know my market. And each day that I did that, I didn't mind parting with my money. Whereas when I ran ads with ClickFunnels, it really bothered me to watch that money go because I wasn't learning anything except that nobody was clicking on my stupid video. So I think that's a really big deal. And the other reason that this has been nice, I am definitely a convert. I'm very biased in your favor. So what I want to ask you now, for sure. What I want to ask you is about your books. You laughed when I said, what's the point of telling stories if no one's listening? So I think that you've gone through that. Talk to me a little bit about the philosophy you have when you started writing. I know that there's military background, and so I'm really interested to hear some of the analytics mixed with the emotion that goes into writing fiction.
I began, I've always been a writer. one way or another. A lot of what I did in the F-16 world was being an instructor. A lot of that material is quite academic and very involved, and you need to find ways to tell a story around it so that it lands with people, so that they don't go get killed. I mean, it was an important job, and so I sort of leaned on the storytelling and writing ability. When I came toward the end of that career, I was looking for something else to do. I was still traveling quite a bit, but in the process of making that transition, I began writing professionally for businesses to help them with their sales processes, to help them with it's basically marketing copy that I wrote, and I did that quite well and was quite successful at it, but it just wasn't terribly fulfilling. I mean, I think one of my major clients was they were into sewage treatment. So I was doing a lot of writing about sewage treatment processes and techniques, and it wasn't floating my boat from a meaning. And is this my highest calling here on the planet?
writing literal shit.
That's exactly right. This is how we treat. Yeah, exactly. So, and I had forever in my mind had this idea that I would want to write something Tom Clancy-esque. He was sort of my first glimpse into this big sprawling thriller world where all these different stories weave together in these big thick books. And I just loved the intrigue and the way that nothing was really as it appeared. And these seemingly meaningless details early on would come to be the deal breaker at the end. And so at the time, Kindle Unlimited and Kindle were starting to be a thing. So there seemed to be a way that people could actually do this for real in a way that wasn't really available before. So I just started writing thrillers. Instead of writing about sewage treatment, I was writing, in my hotel, or on airplanes, writing thrillers. And that's how it came about. My first few rounds of editing were extremely valuable to me. They were an education process in and of themselves. I mean, I think in a 3 or 4 month span, I became 3 or 4 times the writer I started as, and just because you don't know what you don't know. So that's how it began for me. The funny thing mentioning Clancy is that it's interesting how times change. I went back to reread some of his stuff. I think I started reading The Cardinal of the Kremlin, big thick book, and I was excited and I dove in, and I got to about page 70 and I realized nothing is happening. Like, I'm not interested anymore. It's funny that this is what got me started, and now I can't read it because it's just not, the genre standards today are a much quicker pace and a much faster story. But that's sort of the origin story. I went from writing about poo and sewage treatments to writing about spies.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I like that process. And so in one sense, you didn't necessarily think from like an early age you were necessarily going to be writing fiction. Writing was a part of your life. You had a knack for it, but it was sort of later that you joined the two ideas of your love for writing with your enjoyment of novels.
Actually, I always wanted to be a novelist. When I was 20 something, I actually sat down and wrote my first few chapters.
Oh, cool.
And that came at a time in my life when I was about to be exceptionally busy. And so fortunately, nothing happened. I didn't take it any further. What would I have had to say at 23 years old, right? So 20 years, 18, whatever, 15, 16, 18 years later, boy, I'd seen a lot and had some more things to say. And I think what gave me permission to kind of pursue it was that there seemed like there was an economic reason now with the advent of independent publishing.
Yeah.
That, I could plausibly tell my wife, I think this could go someplace. And so, you should feel okay about my spending hours working on this because it might take us someplace,
Yeah.
That's what really gave me the permission to pursue it.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of questions. I don't even know if you've thought about this before, but if you were to be in a room with Clancy and say Don Winslow, do you feel just right from the cuff that you would have their respect as an author based on your really great sales, but also the fact that you're indie? Do you see there being a gap right now, or is that gone?
I think whether or not I would have their respect is hard to answer. We all grow
Right.
up in we all grow up in a certain environment, and we emerge with certain biases one way or another. I I think what's an important question to address is like what is the difference between
Hmm.
an independent author doing well and a traditionally published author doing well. The thing I'll say about traditionally published books is that pipeline works. They produce high quality books. There aren't many stinkers that come out of traditional publishing houses. So often when I do read an independent novel or start to, it's clear that it's not the same people working on these books, right?
Yeah.
You can often tell a quality difference. But there's also a tier of independent writers who have developed their skill and their sensibility and have the editors around them to support this, that they're every bit competitive with the best that traditional publishing has to offer.
Hmm.
I would say that from a business perspective, there really wasn't a whole lot in the way of business things for an author to do when under the traditional model, where all of the distribution, all of the sales numbers, all of the everything that lives with the publishing house, and the author goes maybe today it's on podcasts, maybe it's on television shows, maybe it's appearances and book signings and a book tour and all of those things. They don't have as much insight into whether that's actually working, whether that's producing sales. And so the business of being a successful independent author today, there's a lot more that goes into it, I think, than anybody who came up through the traditional publishing model in generations past has really ever had to think about.
Yeah.
We are deep in the weeds on all the fussy details of what click here and copy this and change this and paste that there, and seeing the way all the numbers fit together and clawing through spreadsheets to see, am I making money or am I not making money, right? We would just, in the past, if we were traditionally published, we would be waiting once a quarter to figure out what's going to happen with our career. But we have a much more hands-on. I mean, we're actually driving the car of our career now in a way that has never been possible before. So I think they're different worlds. I think if it's so much more today than just writing chops and a production process. I think your effort, like, you really have to be sharp and educate yourself and spend time developing skill around how to put your books into the hands of readers at a profit. So it's just I think it's apples and oranges.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. I think about it a little bit because my process was, everybody who listens to this podcast knows ad nauseum. I had a literary agent. I was pursuing traditional publishing. I came up through the MFA system. So I read all of the award winners, that kind of stuff. And to realize, one, that I actually felt more of a connection to the magical science fiction, plotty, action-driven fiction. That was my first thing. Like, I was reading Stephen King in secret for years because he was so looked down upon by the literary community. And then to eventually have the existential question, like, am I ruining myself by reading his books? Because now I go back and read some of the stuff that I'm told is great, and it's harder for me to pay attention. Is that like, am I... is it like taking meth or something like that? Like, I ruined my pleasure centers or something. Stephen King is meth. And so I don't know that I have a really clear resolution to that, but to say that if I pick up a great literary book now, I still love it the same way I did, and I still have easy time paying attention. It's just, I'm going to gravitate a lot more often toward thrilling type of books. And I think there's more you can do to critique culture, even from that perspective. I was going somewhere with this comment, but I lost myself along the way, which happens.
Literature versus genre?
Yeah, I think so. And I think traditional and the prestige, thank you for getting me back on track. The prestige of publishing traditionally still exists in my mind as a thing.
Sure.
So I guess I'm just curious, do you think about that, or you're a ways down the road from where I'm at? I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on traditional publishing for yourself. Is there prestige in it, I guess, because of all of the gatekeepers?
Um, I think there's certainly something to that. I think there's also a thrill associated with seeing your title on the end cap in a bookstore or
Mm,
at the airport when people are buying books to go on the airplane. And those distribution channels are only basically available through traditional publishing. At some point, independent authors grow big and powerful enough career-wise so that they can, the prime example is of penning a distribution deal and not a publishing deal, but distribution only. That's J.K. Rowling. She doesn't need a publisher to do those things. She just needs a distributor.
mhm,
But that kind of model didn't really exist. So that the only way to get your books physically in physical spaces was via traditional publishing. And there certainly is, it's famously difficult to catch the right person at the right time in their day, at the right time in their week, at the right time in their publishing schedule to have interest in you and push you through the pipeline.
yeah.
And there is a certain prestige. That's also the path to the New York Times list, if you want to be on the New York Times list. But there's also there's kind of a dirty secret, if you will, to the traditional publishing route. Certainly the top 0.1%, they're doing extremely well.
Mhm.
And but for everybody else, many, 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 many of the bestsellers that you've read and enjoy, many of the literary award winners still have day jobs.
Yes.
Still have day jobs.
Yeah.
Because that model is so it's just been under a lot of economic pressure over the last, certainly over the last decade, and the way that business has changed in that period of time, the model is less economically viable, the traditional publishing model for most authors.
Yeah.
And the opportunity for successful independent authors is 10x the revenue. I remember this story from back in the day, trying to decide if I should pursue a traditional publishing deal or go the independent route. Was Hugh Howey's account of, or Hugh Howey, however you pronounce it, heard it both ways. His account of, they were really excited to present him with a $50,000 advance, and he was like, "You realize I'm making that every single month in book sales already.
Mm.
So what do you're not getting it. This is not making sense economically."
Mm-hmm.
But for a very small number of authors at the very top, the traditional publishing is still,
Yeah.
Gillian Flynn, she's doing okay, right? And so there are still lottery winners, I like to think of them, who are still these, we can sort of project ourselves onto that and search for it. I don't think it's as nearly as economically viable. Even when you are traditionally published, you cannot count the number of traditionally published authors who I've spoken with or who are Emma clients who just talked about absolutely nothing happened. The publisher did nothing to move the books didn't move. And then I had to fight for my rights back or wait them out for the 7-year period so that I could actually make some money with these books. So like I say, apples and oranges, one world versus another. If you have a strong desire for personal reasons to get the affirmation of traditional publishing, by all means, go for it. Don't close your doors, though, because I think if you want to do this professionally, the best path is independently because the margins are better.
Yeah. I will tread carefully with this comment because I was never really part of the military, but my understanding is that the closest analogy here would be your commissioned officers versus your NCOs. There's always going to be a bridge between the respect levels. Somehow you feel like I think the NCOs feel like, hey, I worked my ass off to get to this place and I deserve it. And then there are the commissioned officers who feel like, oh, I went to college and I can get much higher up in the ranks and all of the things that go on there. And so there's perceived prestige, whichever side of the fence you're on, I think, in certain ways. I'm not really even asking a question there, just kind of thinking through how I view this at the moment. I had a couple of guests on the show a little while ago. They were the first ones who ever even made me aware that self-fulfillment was a possibility. They were doing it through um, that crowdsourcing platform. I can't think. Brandon Sanderson actually picked up their method and ran his 4 books
Kickstarter.
pre-order. Kickstarter. Thank you. Yeah. So
this was the biggest Kickstarter in Kickstarter history.
Yes, by a long shot. And yeah, he just destroyed it for books, I believe. There may have been some bigger ones for like tech, but he made many, many millions of dollars on Kickstarter. And I think the biggest difference there is that they immediately go into hardcover self-fulfillment. But when I realized that was an option, I thought, why aren't more people attempting this? Because you actually can control quality even better than if you go with Amazon and let them choose certain options for you. So I really like that. Talk real briefly, because I've only got you for another 5 minutes and I have so much I wish I could cover. Talk real briefly about self-fulfillment and your story there, because I think that's one of the big selling points of Ammo, your experience with Amazon and why you went to self-fulfillment.
Yeah, I wasn't treated all that well. And there came a time in my relationship with Amazon where they had an opportunity to treat me as a human and didn't. And it made me angry, and it made me aware of the extent to which I was vulnerable to their moods and their algorithmic, and not to belittle the size of their problem. I mean, there's 60 million titles, who knows how many million authors. You can't have one live representative to coddle every author en route to their, the Kindle platform. You have to do things automatically. And then as soon as you have a platform like that, the next thing is somebody tries to figure out how to game it so that they can get more money than might otherwise have earned. So for all probably good reasons, I mean, they're victims of their success, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it makes sense for me to trust them with my career. Mm-hmm. So I got the sense that I need to bring this under my purview so that if something's not working, I have the data to tell it's not working, and I have recourse to try something different in a different way. Yep. So selling directly to fans, fulfillment is fairly easy on the digital side. Damon Courtney has built an amazing business called BookFunnel, and it helps people to get books onto their reader if that's what they want. They can also read directly on their digital device, also listen to audiobooks. So that without the BookFunnel, I mean, before that came online, self-fulfillment was significantly more difficult electronically. Self-fulfillment of physical copies, that's certainly worth thinking about and developing, but not before you know that you have really good market fit. And you have really good market fit because you're selling a lot of ebooks and you're getting good reviews. And, people are coming back for more and they're bothering you. When's the next one coming out? Come on, get back to writing. Stop sitting with these, get back to writing, right?
Yes.
You'll know that you've got good market fit, and you can then start taking on a bit more financial investment to buy the inventory if you're going to self-fulfill. It was more economically viable with higher margins to use the print-on-demand companies up until about a year ago. And so what we're seeing is that their printing costs and their shipping costs have grown more prohibitive. So the margins are a bit smaller than they were before. So now it used to be that you didn't have to put any financial investment in developing your physical copy book business for hardcovers or paperbacks. You just have to get the files professionally formatted, and then they wouldn't print the book until a sale occurred, right? That's the whole point. But now we're finding that once you have market fit, by far the better option is to buy a number of copies, copies at a wholesale discount to increase your margins. And each printer has their own tiers, and self-fulfill, whether that's through an assistant who's helping you to box and ship, or if you're a glutton for punishment and you want to do it yourself, you can. There's folks doing it both ways quite successfully. So it's a thing that nobody really dreamed they could do really 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I really think it's the wave of the future, though, because of the way the cost structures are put together?
Okay, I wrote the Nine Lives of Marva DeLonghi, which is the book that I am the primary book that I'm selling in ammo right now, because I wanted to be more commercially viable. I'd written literary stuff before that. I knew that it was just going to be a hard road for an unpublished, unknown author. And one of the decisions that I made through the drafting process was that I thought I will catch the market at their interest in lead strong female characters. So I intentionally designed a woman who's a strong lead female character, and I intentionally gave her a man's kind of a name. There's a play on words. She's leukemia, so leukemia. I wanted people to feel like here's a really strong woman. It's a male author, and all of the fun that came with that. And then I'm interested to hear from you if there was any thought process similar to that for you. Although I think you're more level headed than I am and probably wouldn't try to catch the market on a whim. But you have Sam Jameson. And I think that most people would assume genre and everything that Sam is a dude.
They do. They do assume that. And I did pick a name that could be either male or female. I started writing Sam as the main character in basically from the beginning. I think I hadn't read any really good thrillers that had starred women. And I mean, some of my favorite people on planet Earth are women. Strong, capable, amazing people. And I also like to push buttons a little bit. One of my characters was gay at the time, and not because I had a social agenda per se, but it was long before really the traction of movements for groups that are traditionally marginalized. I guess you could say I was ahead of the curve there, but it was completely by accident. I just felt like there might be most readers are female. Yeah. And even male readers, I think, might enjoy a strong female character. So I wish I could say that I was reading tea leaves and I had forecasted this social turn or trend or whatever. But it was, if to the extent that it's worked, it's been accidental.
Yeah. Your answer doesn't surprise me at all either, though, saying that you kind of like pushing buttons. I obviously have not like dived deeply into your biography necessarily, but I have listened to several podcasts you've been on and kind of searched you up a little bit on the internet to get ready for this. So that does lead me into a not exactly connected question, but I'm interested because when I didn't know who you were, the reason was the Sullivans from the Kickstarter. They were guests on my podcast that I mentioned earlier. They were the first time I'd ever heard of direct fulfillment. When I saw that you were doing that, I thought, okay, that's like a green light, kind of a good thing. And then you were on some podcast talking about NFT books, and you've published your books as NFTs. I'm a big fan of Vaynerchuk, and I he's super high on NFTs. So I have a relationship with a company called Readle that I do a little bit of my work as an NFT. It's not gotten really big because there's some glitchy things going on. However, I would love for you to talk a little bit about where you see that market going and why you decided to jump into it.
That's a terrific question. So I've published one of my novels, actually two of my novels, as NFTs or digital collectibles or digital property with a company called Book.io. And so what they've done is they've built a platform that allows you to mint NFTs, and each one is unique. It's either cryptographically unique. All of them are cryptographically unique, but there's only a certain number of each cover for these books, and there's multiple covers that are produced. So it's a really fun process when you mint them. When a customer mints them, it doesn't exist until they've run the transaction, and it's kind of like a lottery because you're hoping you get one of those really rare covers, those really rare editions. And it's useful to get a really rare edition because there's a secondary market for this property. You own it, and you can only read it if you can be proven that you bought the book. And then later, if you want to sell it, you can sell it. So it's property in a way that digital things have never been property before, because you used to be able just to copy and paste. and you could make an infinite number of copies at zero price if you wanted to, and distribute them to all of your friends for free. Well, you can't do that anymore. And what that means is that it opens up a new world inside of digital commerce that has never existed before, because things weren't really property. In fact, when you buy an ebook from one of the retailers, you're not buying anything but a license to read their digital property. And so when a retailer goes out of business or whatever, it disappears. The book disappears from your reader because you never owned it. And not that everybody wants to reread everything they've ever read, but there is something nice about owning your own copy. And if you want to give it to your friend to read, you can do that. You can, transfer it to them for no fee, or you can sell it to them, or whatever you want to do. So the utility of it is just that you can protect copyright. You can produce lots and lots of fun variants for people. If you're an author, every time my books change hands, I get a percentage of that transaction now and forevermore. So for the books that are they're still minting, and the minted books are still trading, and so it's a nice residual income that it produces. So I think it's absolutely it's here to stay. It's just like any industry. In the beginning, people don't know what it is, and by virtue of its being different, they speculate, and people think. There are people who are starting up projects in good faith with good intentions, and they think it's going to do well, and it doesn't do well, and they have to shut the project down, leaving all of these investors holding the bag. And there are unscrupulous people in this world because it's new. It's a gold rush. It's just like the .com boom where, dog food online was going to be the road to riches, or, whatever. And not many companies actually prove that they could demonstrate value, bring value for their customers. The same kind of thing is happening in the NFT world. This will settle out over time. It will be back to business as usual, which is, if you want to run a business, produce value, deliver, and make happy customers, and they'll bring more customers to your business, and you can grow, and your marketing will be more effective. So it'll be less hype driven, shortly in the future. And we're already getting there. I mean, those companies that are hype driven and are vaporware, if you will, they're slowly getting weeded out. People are getting arrested who need to be arrested. Right? Those kinds of things are endemic to any new market. But when that dust settles, I think we'll all be really happy that we have this new digital property option that we never had before.
I spoke to a gentleman who is very, very, he has his finger on the pulse of NFTs, and especially in the book world. The one thing he mentioned that made me a little bit nervous is he says he could see the royalties of being the original minter going away. And I hope that they don't, because I think that that's the one thing that this actually stands to fix about not only ebooks like you talked about with licensing, but also with physical copies of a book. I love used books. If you were to walk around my house right now, you'd see that there's more than 1,000 books. And I would say 90% of them are used books. I can get them so much cheaper. I like collecting, those kind of things. But for the author, it would be nice to take 1% off of every transaction perpetually. Then the person who sells the book still makes plenty of money. There's just plenty of money to go around. And I think it makes for a more robust economy when you get to forever retain your property. I really like that a lot. That's probably the biggest thing that got me into it. Another question, and then we have to be done, is have you thought about doing any kind of exclusivity with your NFTs where people would get an opportunity to have a night with the author if they have the key for one of those NFTs? Maybe you mint 100 copies of a book and then they get a night with the author. Have you considered any of those elements?
I have considered them. And there are folks who are doing really cool things. They're building out Discord servers, and they're building out experiences for readers to have. And the key to open the door to this cool place to hang out is the NFT, is the book itself. The thing about that is you're building yourself a part-time job at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably a full-time job, right? So I have to be very careful these days what I sign up for, because I always feel perpetually oversubscribed. But there certainly is room for creating a really immersive, really cool experience if you have if you're partners with the people with the technical and artistic know-how to make those things happen. That's best. If you have that kind of know-how, it's a different environment entirely, and you can build a business exclusively in that environment that works. That it's not Facebook ads, it's not Instagram ads, it's not TikTok ads, it's nothing related to those. It's in more Web3 type spaces, and it's more organic, but it takes more of your time, and it's more personal interaction, and it's more, building more of a community. So the other thing about that environment is that the tools are not yet transparent to more of a lay person. As the industry develops, there will be more tools that are overlaid on top of the basic technology that make the interface between, you'll be able to read it more easily, you'll be able to buy it more easily, and it'll sort of mainstreamize. But those are things I think about in terms of adding value. Gosh, I would love to. I have 100 ideas for how to make that really cool.
Yeah. Exactly.
But I have to be realistic about what I can really sign myself up for,
Yeah. That's the entrepreneur side of me. It definitely exists. I love creating businesses, and I love walking away from businesses sometimes. But I get there and I'm like, oh man, the possibilities. So in closing, I will do just a solo intro, and I will talk about where people can find you for the most part. I'll drop all of your information in the show notes. But in closing, where's the one place that you want people to go right now to find out more about you or engage with you?
So if you are interested in the thrillers, they're gritty, edgy, starring a female lead. It's spy thrillers and international crime stuff, all sorts of fun. I love that kind of environment. That's at lars.buzz. And if you're an author interested in learning more about selling directly to your readers in the way that we do it inside of the AMMO program, that's ammoauthor.com, and AMMO is AMMO, which is Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization. So those are the two places. And we still have some NFTs to mint. So if there are folks who want to see that process, I'll send that link to you also. And you'll be able to do that on the Cardano blockchain through book.io.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lars. It was great to have a longer conversation with you and get behind the scenes a little bit. And we will talk to you again in a couple of hours as it happens.
Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?